Hey everyone, Adam here, So Wizard Podcast. I have another interview for you today. I got to sit down with Echo Andersson to talk about her new movie, The Return. The scroller on the bottom of the video is a little bit wrong for a while. I had to change it because originally the interview was with BJ, the director, and Echo, who stars in the movie. BJ had some connection issues, so I got to talk to Echo and then rescheduled with BJ, so that one's coming later this week in another day or two. But Echo was really awesome. The name Echo is really awesome. We talk her career, acting, creative arts, and of course, The Return, which is available now on VOD, so make sure you check that out and enjoy the interview. Hey everyone, Adam here, So Wizard Podcast. I'm sitting down with Echo Andersson to talk about her new movie, The Return. How you doing, Echo?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Doing good. Thank you for coming on. Before we get to The Return, I always like to ask people in the creative industries, when did you know you wanted to be an actor and how did you get your start?
I knew pretty soon in life. I think I was 5 when I started expressing interest. I would watch movies, and I remember if I saw an actress that I liked, I would watch a scene over and over, and then I would memorize it, and then I'd sit my family down and do the scene. So my parents were like, "Oh, let's get this kid in an acting class so we don't have to do this." So yeah, pretty early on, I knew that was what I wanted to do. So I just enrolled in local acting classes in Canada where I grew up and kind of went from there.
Very cool. And where in Canada did you grow up? Was there show business around?
Surprisingly, yes. I grew up in Winnipeg, Manitoba, which is a northern city, not very big, but has a great tax rebate for films. So a lot of American films would come there and shoot. And so I fortunately was able to start auditioning at around 8 with local casting directors. And that's when I started booking. And there's a good theater scene there, good education there. So I was able to kind of dip my toe into it in a smaller scene before I moved to a bigger city to pursue it.
That's really cool that you had the access at such a young age and you knew what you wanted to do.
Yeah. It was great.
Because I always feel like proximity to the industry, or at least accessibility, has to help.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I don't think I would have continued pursuing it if there hadn't been some stage for me to be on. It probably would have just withered away like other, hobbies.
Yeah, if you had to hold on to that dream for another 10, 12 years before you could move to another country to pursue it.
Exactly.
Yeah. So what kind of auditions did you start out for? Was it, kid number 3, or was it kind of commercial work? Or
yeah, it was that kind of stuff. It was, I remember the first thing that I booked was my second audition ever. And it was Capote, which was Philip Seymour Hoffman. It ended up winning the award. It was a big thing, but that was my, a really great introduction into how the film industry works, was that I auditioned for this. It was a little speaking role, but it was with Philip Seymour Hoffman. I booked it. And then I showed up the day on set, and there was a girl there whose mom was friends with one of the producers, and they swapped us out on the day.
Oh, that's brutal.
What? And then I was just like, okay, well, I was so devastated. My mom was like, well, this is a lesson. We learned that this is a part of the industry. And I've remembered that my whole way through. So still a great experience. Still got to meet him, which was great.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, talk about ripping the Band-Aid on the Hollywood disappointment.
Oh my God. It was hey, you want to know what it feels like? Here you go, kid.
Yeah, that is not a lesson an 8-year-old would ever forget. All right. So after the disappointing turnout of Capote, what came next?
So then I did a lot of theater in Winnipeg. And then the next I did a couple little one lines in commercials. And then the next big thing was a show in Toronto that I had gotten my first agent in the city when I was about 17, and I booked a role on a CW show in Toronto called Cheerleader Death Squad that ended up not getting picked up, but it would have been super cool. And yeah, that was the next thing that kind of got me out of Winnipeg. That's when I moved out of the hometown.
Okay, cool. And did you head for, I think Toronto was also a big film scene up there?
Toronto was, they filmed a fair amount of stuff there. So I stayed there for about a year after I shot the pilot for that show. And then I moved to Vancouver because that's really that's Hollywood North, where a lot happens. So I got an agent on the West Coast, went out there, and started taking classes and pursuing it in Vancouver.
Okay, cool. So Vancouver was kind of your next big step.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The cheerleader was a cheerleader death squad, you said?
Well, yeah, great name. Great name.
Yeah, it is a great name. Just name alone is kind of giving me, was it like Scream Queen kind of vibes?
Exactly. It was like Scream Queens before Scream Queens, about these like cheerleaders who get recruited to start like fighting evil. And it's, very campy. Yeah.
Yeah, it's insane it didn't get picked up, because the first season of Scream Queens is like one of the best individual seasons of TV there is.
It was, I don't know what happened.
Yeah. I know it's always something you can't control, and probably not worth dwelling on too much.
Exactly.
So you're in Vancouver now, and was that a lot of different feeling going to a much bigger place?
Yeah, yes and no. I definitely have always felt very at home in a city. And I mean, so I went to Vancouver, and then I went back to Winnipeg when we shot The Return. And then I moved to New York. So Vancouver, even now, doesn't really seem like that big of a city. And I definitely feel very at home in a big city. So the transition was pretty easy. And I can't imagine living in a smaller place now.
Oh, well, that's good. It's good you were able to adapt.
Yeah.
And I have to imagine the pool of potential jobs is vastly bigger.
Totally. And I mean, it's everything rises. So like a lot more opportunity, a lot more competition and whatever. But it's just a more exciting environment to be in, because even if you're not working, directly, in your field or whatever, it's being surrounded by people and being surrounded by artists and collaborators. And I've kind of transitioned in this last year into writing, and that's been really exciting to be able to work with my actor friends and write things that we create.
Was the writing always part of the plan, or was it kind of a COVID pivot?
No. Well, I guess it was pre-COVID. It was when I moved to New York. I went to acting school, and that kind of I found that writing was like a good outlet, because school was so intense, and so I didn't want to act when I wasn't at school. And then I started writing, and then that really started kind of being more present in how I was expressing myself creatively. So, acting is still a passion of mine, but I think writing is, I'm starting to think that's maybe the trajectory that I'm going to go down.
That's cool. That's a smart move too, that you didn't want to act all day at school, then go act as a job. It's like you'd be doing it 24/7. So you found something adjacent, but the two could supplement each other.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And did your acting approach change at all when you started to get into the writing?
A little bit. I think the main thing that it did was that it made me start being a little more critical of the scripts that I would be auditioning for, and I'd be reading things going like, oh gosh, and I remember I had a couple conversations with my agents, and I was like, I don't know if I want to read for this. Like, the script is just not great. And she's like, you're not a writer, you're an actor. And I was like, well, I don't know, maybe I should be a writer then.
Even if you weren't a writer, if you feel the script's not great, then you don't think the script's great. Yeah.
Exactly. Pass on it. Yeah.
I mean, if it's your first job ever, maybe that's another thing. It's like, look, you got bills to pay.
Totally.
Yeah, that's funny. Maybe not for the people writing the scripts, but
probably not so funny.
All right. But in The Return, you are an actor. Yes,
I'm an actor in The Return. And yeah, that was one of the funnest projects I've ever worked on.
Okay.
Really.
So
great.
How did that come across your desk?
It was a Winnipeg casting director who had reached out, and I read the breakdown for my character at Jordan, and I was like, that's me. That's like, I don't have to adjust. I just want to read for this so badly. And I knew that it was going to be a kind of a competitive role because Richard had already been pegged for it. So they had a lot of people coming in for it, and I felt so strongly about this role, and I read for it and then I didn't hear anything, and I did something incredibly unprofessional. I wish BJ was on this call so he could, but I messaged BJ like 2 weeks after my audition, and I was like, I know this is so unorthodox and so inappropriate, and like, I'm sorry, but this, like, I promise you, if I get this role, I will make this the best Jordan. And I was like, but I totally get it if someone else is cast, like, it's fine. And you know that I can't stop thinking about it. And he was just like very diplomatic. He was like, hey, thanks for reaching out. You know, it's a long process and we'll get back to you. And I was like, cool, great. And then he called me the next week and let me know that I got it. So yeah, I really want.
Awesome. Yeah. Yeah, you kind of said that maybe it's something you shouldn't have done, but you got the role, so
yeah,
it worked.
yeah. And we had talked about it after BJ and I was like, I don't know how much of a factor that played, and he was like, no, like we had already decided, like we'd already like kind of pegged you for it, but we had to audition, you know, everyone who was, you know, eligible for it and whatever. So maybe that was just a little extra push.
Yeah. You really want the job.
Yeah.
It's funny because stories like that come out of the movie industry pretty regularly, where it's like this person broke all the rules and it worked out great.
Right. And this was a time I was like, what do I have to lose? Either I like, maybe I'm not getting the part anyway, so fine, but I'm just gonna
I think that's a good mentality, especially in the industry of an actor, because you really put yourself out on the line. So
totally,
you got to go for it.
Yeah. Sometimes you have to break the rules, I think.
Yeah, because I've also heard a lot where they tell you what they want in an audition, and if you go in and try to give them exactly what they told you they want, it's not at all what they want.
Exactly. I mean, that's usually it. I find that they just want someone who's going to like surprise them or be like, oh, I didn't think about it that way. I like what she did. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So when you're prepping for not just the role in The Return, but any role, do you kind of just read it, absorb it, maybe take what they suggest in the back of your mind, but just make it your own no matter what? And
yeah, I mean, it definitely depends on kind of the tone of the show. You know, if it like you can read, like, say if I'm reading for something like Riverdale or some where you already know the world, you know, then you try and play within that universe. But definitely there have been times where, you know, you kind of have an idea of what everyone else is going to do in the room. So you're like, well, I should just do something totally out of left field and see what happens. And like, at the very least, it'll be a memorable audition for them. And maybe I won't book it because it's not right, but they'll remember my audition. So that's more often than not the approach that I take.
That's interesting too, because that kind of goes along with the thing of like, you're not just auditioning for this role, but any future role these people cast.
Exactly, especially in television. Like there's, you know, you do something super strange for maybe a not strange role and they go like, that girl's not right, but we have some, you know, weird character coming up in the next arc that we would love, you know, her to try for or whatever.
Have you had that kind of direct correlation callback at this point?
I did have one instance. This was actually for a play in New York, and it was this really meek, written as a very meek, shy character who's very in her shell, and there was probably 20 girls reading for it, and we were in a very tiny theater, so you could hear all of the auditions, and it was like everyone was doing the exact same thing, and just in the moment before I walked in, I rehearsed it just like that, like very meek, very shy. In the moment walking in, I was like, oh God, I have to like make this explosive. And I didn't end up booking that role, but I got a bigger role in the play, which was this outgoing, you know, whatever character. So it worked once.
Yeah. I've only known you for all of 15 minutes, but it seems like the more outgoing one is more your personality.
Yes.
Yeah. When you said meek and quiet, I was like, I'm not sure if that's a fit.
No, it doesn't really. I can try, but no.
Right. Okay. So back to The Return. Sorry, I kind of go all over the place.
Oh, no worries.
The audition came across your desk. You desperately wanted the part, got it.
Yeah.
What is that like, the filming experience like when you've kind of put yourself on the line? Like day one, did you show up and like, oh man, I really.
Yeah, I was, well, also just working with Richard because he had done so much, and Sarah, who had done a lot, and I felt kind of like the new kid on the block, and I was like, oh no, like I have to like really step up. And our first day, we ended up shooting the last scene of the movie the first day, and there was like a lot of intense stuff. Richard and I had met like once prior, maybe twice, fairly formally, and we had to like have like our kind of most intense emotional scene together. And that, I really felt like Richard was like holding my hand through that day. And like I remember just we were rehearsing a pretty emotional thing, and he kind of looked at me right before, and he was like, just do it, like just do it fully, all the way, don't hold anything back. I was like, okay, all right. And yeah, that was kind of the energy we maintained the rest of the film. So yeah, definitely there was pressure though, because I had talked a big game, and then I was like, oh no.
Yeah, that would be very intimidating. It's like, oh man, now I have to deliver on this.
Bring it now.
Yeah. That's funny. I know obviously everyone knows that movies, TV, everything is shot at a sequence. Is it usually the experience where you go like, here's the biggest scene, like your character emotionally has to go through, you're starting there?
I feel like that has happened a lot. But I don't know. And I don't know if it's just, I was on a project once where things were shot just like sequentially. So we actually did shoot in sequence. It was just for a short though. And so it worked. It was great because you got to kind of like emotionally build throughout. But I do find that it's a great way to break the ice for shooting for everyone on the crew, for the director and for the cast to be like, all right, well, let's just like go balls to the wall day one, and let's get it all out there. Let's see how we work together in these intense scenes. And then that kind of helps everything else, all the little stuff, all the inserts, all the, dialogue heavy stuff.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of reverse engineering the process. Instead of having all this time to learn who your character is, it's like you got to learn it, but then you know who it is for the whole rest of the thing.
Totally.
It's really cool. The job is, it kind of baffles me being an industry outsider. Like you have to create this person and be this person, especially when you have to be this person at their most vulnerable first thing.
Right.
But then when you're playing a scene where you're not in that space, you can't use what you learn from that exactly, because totally. I'm explaining acting to you like that makes any sense.
No, that's so right. That's so true. Yeah.
Was there anything aside from that particularly challenging with the return that you hadn't encountered before?
Just the heat in the house that we were shooting in. It was like 100 degrees. We were shooting in this old heritage house, and it was just like the hottest week of the summer, and it was a 4-story house. So some of the stuff, like our green room was on the 4th floor, and it's just like hotter every floor. So I remember like getting our makeup done, and I was like, I'm just sweating it off. Like it's not staying. Like they had to do touches so often because we're just like sweating, and they're trying desperately for us to not look wet as we're shooting everything. So trying to like we're running from creatures and stuff's going on, and then you cut and you're just like wet. We're like, all right.
When was it shot?
It was shot in July, and it was just like deadly hot. It was just like the hottest week on record.
Of course.
As it would be.
All right. Was that 2020?
2019.
2019, okay.
Yeah. It's so weird with COVID how it's like pushed all of this so far. Like now that feels like ages ago.
Right, yeah, like time is very different now.
Yeah.
So it was all shot in 2019 and you had it all wrapped, like COVID didn't get in the way of that.
No, they were doing post and everything was ready to go in the, oh gosh, I'm going to get my dates wrong, but I think in the winter of 2019 or 2020, we were wrapped and we had all seen the first cut. And then in Canada, it was released during the pandemic. So we were doing all of our Zoom screenings and interviews and stuff like that. But it's exciting now that we're finally out in the US.
Yeah, coming up. So the Canadian release, was it like a VOD? Because theaters were probably
Yes, it was, yeah, VOD. And there was a Super Channel. It was released on a Canadian channel, so there was a few different platforms that people could watch it.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Did you guys do any film festivals? I mean, they all went on, but...
Yes. Mm. You're
Put you on the spot.
then.
Oh, I was.
Yes. I can kind of hear you. It's a little choppy.
Hang on 1 second.
It's still a little choppy.
Sorry for a second.
Wait. Okay. That's better.
Oh, am I back?
Yep. You're back.
Okay, man. Sorry about all these technical issues.
No worries. No worries.
Try to be more professional than that. Right, we're at film festivals.
Right. Yes. Yeah. We submitted and I don't know all of them, but we did win a few. I think BJ's won a Best Director. We won Best Picture at. He's gonna kill me at a festival that I don't remember the name of.
It's okay. I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
Okay. And Richard's been nominated, and I think he won one. So yeah, it did pretty well. And I think there's more to come. So we're just kind of slowly releasing those as they come up.
Very cool.
Yeah.
One kind of big question. I don't mean to go to a sad place if you haven't been able to, but have you been able to see this with an audience?
No. There was a Winnipeg screening at a theater that BJ organized, but none of us live there. So we, as a cast, got together in Vancouver, and we had like Sarah's family came, and we brought some of our friends together and had like a very intimate screening at Richard's place. So.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah, the COVID thing really messed everything up, but I know people who make the movies, it's great to get that first.
Yes.
But I guess you just kind of have to roll with it.
Yeah, there'll be more movies.
Yeah, there you go. Maybe I should stop asking that question because more often than not, the answer is depressing.
It's just a time in our lives that we'll remember.
Right. Yeah, that's true. That's definitively true. So going back to your writing, are you currently working? I mean, I'm not asking you to give details, but do you currently have anything in the works?
I do, yeah. During the pandemic, so it's mostly screenwriting, like doing screenplays. But during the pandemic, I released a poetry book, and I'm working on a pilot right now that we're going to be shooting a teaser for this August in New York, and hopefully shopping around in the fall.
Very cool.
Yeah, so we will see.
Are you also? Yeah, definitely. Are you also starring?
No, I'm not. This is going to be a totally behind the camera project for me, which is the first. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, that is cool. And your screenwriting, poetry, do you work in any other mediums? Are you writing anything for the stage, maybe?
I'm not as of yet, although, I mean, I've been in Vancouver for the past 2 years since the pandemic started. So that's not really a theater town. And I think perhaps once I'm back in New York, I'll start feeling inspired to put something on a stage.
I guess that makes sense. You want to work on what you could potentially get further.
Right, exactly.
Very cool. What's the can you get into the genre of the pilot, or are you going to keep it totally quiet for now?
I can my partner that I'm writing it with, her grandmother brought belly dance to North America. So they're kind of this like matriarch family of belly dance. They're Egyptian American, and there is just a lot of really crazy drama that comes with that culture, and kind of the divide of it's going to be based on a young woman straddling the line between her heritage and living as a 20-something in LA and trying to find the balance of that. So it's kind of a coming of age belly dance murder mystery. There's a
Oh,
lot.
you throw in a murder. Wow. Okay.
Yeah,
You're doing a lot with that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and it's based on true events, so it's exciting.
Oh, that's awesome. We'll definitely be on the lookout for more of that.
Yeah.
All right, Echo, I appreciate you coming on. I don't want to hold up your whole afternoon, and I'm afraid the thing might drop us again.
No worries. Thank you very much for having me.
Absolutely. So, why don't you tell everyone where they can find, where and when they can find The Return?
So the return is going to be released August 10th in the States. And it's going to be on video on demand. So watch for it wherever you get video on demand. And we can't wait for you to see it.
Awesome. And do you have anything you want to plug, your book, your socials, anything like that?
Yeah, you can check out my poetry book. It's for sale. It's Always Hungry and Perpetually Blue. And you can find that linked on my Instagram, which is Echo Andersson.
Awesome. Well, thank you. I'd like to thank Echo Andersson one more time for coming on the show to talk to me about her career and her latest movie, The Return, which, as I mentioned, is available now. So make sure you get on that. Also, make sure you like and subscribe. We have a lot more interviews, unboxings, recommendations, movie coverage, all that stuff coming your way. You're not going to want to miss out. And the subscribes really help us grow our audience and know what you guys want to see more of, so we can provide that. Also, make sure you listen to So Wizard Podcast every single week, wherever you get your podcasts. SoWizardPodcast.com is your resource for reviews, recommendations, videos, merchandise, and more. So Wizard Podcast can also be found on Patreon, where for as little as $1 a month, you get multiple monthly bonus shows. And we love hearing feedback, so leave us something in the comments, leave us something on social media. All of our accounts will be found in the show notes after the show. And on a more personal note, a good friend and I have an ongoing comedy comic series out. It's called Social Studies. You can find it at socialstudiescomic.com. It's a slice-of-life comedy comic about the high school experience, all the ridiculousness that goes along with it. We take all that stuff, boil it down, cram it through the prism of the 90s cartoons that we grew up on. You can see a lot of Recess, Nicktoons, Rocko's Modern Life especially, some Calvin and Hobbes in there, all the stuff that we loved and influenced our creative journeys in the comic. It's called Social Studies. Once again, socialstudiescomic.com. First chapter just wrapped up, so it's a great time to jump on board before chapter 2 comes sometime in the next few months. We're nailing down the release date. Once again, socialstudiescomic.com. Check it out. Thanks.